Welcome to Science Beyond Sleep. Tonight, I want to ask you something gentle, but profound. Who are you, really? If your memories disappear, if everything you've done, everyone you've loved, every moment that shaped you, quietly faded, would there still be a you left behind? In this episode, we'll take a slow journey through memory, identity, and the science of the self. We'll explore how your brain stitches together the story of you, why memory is more fragile than you think, and what happens when that story begins to fall apart. This is not a story of loss, but of wonder, of how the mind remembers, forgets, and still holds on to something deeper. So settle in, let your body relax, and let your mind follow me as we gently step beyond memory and explore the illusion of identity. What is memory, really? Close your eyes for a moment and try to remember something small. A quiet moment from your past, maybe a childhood room, a smell in the air, the way the light fell on a particular day. Feel that image, that flicker of memory, returning. But what is it? Most of us think of memory like a shelf of books. Each event, each moment, carefully stored and labeled, waiting for us to pull it down and replay it exactly as it happened. But science tells us something very different. Memory is not a bookshelf. It's not a video. It's not even a file. It's a reconstruction. Every time you remember something, your brain is reassembling it from scattered fragments, from visual cues, emotions, sounds, smells, the context you're in now, even from things you didn't originally notice. You don't retrieve a memory. You rebuild it. This is both beautiful and unsettling, because it means your memories are living things. They change every time you touch them. And so does your story, the story of who you are in the brain. Memory isn't located in one spot. It's a collaboration. The hippocampus helps encode and consolidate. The amygdala attaches emotion. The neocortex stores long-term impressions. Even something as simple as remembering your first bicycle could involve dozens of different neural pathways activating together. And each time you recall that bike, the color, the feeling of the handlebars, the way the air smelled that day, your brain updates it just slightly. You rewrite the past every time you visit it. That's why two people can share the same experience, but remember it very differently. Their brains didn't record it like cameras. They filtered it, emotionally and chemically, through their own unique perspectives. What's more, over time, your brain may forget some parts of the original memory and unconsciously replace them with assumptions. Little fictions, gaps filled in with guesswork. But here's the fascinating part. You won't feel the difference. You'll still say, I remember. And you'll mean it. Scientists call this reconsolidation. Every act of remembering is also an act of change. Your brain retrieves a memory, softens it, edits it, and then stores the new version in its place. Memory is more like a watercolor painting than a photograph. It fades, blends, runs at the edges. And sometimes, it becomes more beautiful or more painful than the original moment ever was. This idea might sound like a flaw, a defect in how we recall, but perhaps it's a kind of quiet brilliance. Because memory isn't just about accuracy, it's about meaning. Your brain isn't trying to create a perfectly factual archive. It's trying to keep you oriented, grounded. It's telling you, here's who you are, here's what matters, here's how you've become who you've become. But what if it's wrong? What if some of the memories you trust most, the ones that define who you are only partially real? What happens to you if the memory changes? This question leads us into the mystery of identity. Because if memory isn't stable, and if memory shapes the self, then the self must not be stable either. That idea may feel disorienting, but it can also be freeing. Because maybe, just maybe, you're not trapped in your past. Maybe who you are isn't set in stone. Maybe, like memory itself, you are something that shifts, that evolves, that can be softened. 2.so tonight. We begin here with this quiet truth. Your memories are not fixed. They are soft. They are malleable. They are stitched from emotion, shaped by need, and lit by imagination. And they are still yours. Let's continue deeper into how memory and identity intertwine, into how you became who you think you are, and what happens when the stitching starts to unravel. You are your memories, or so we think. From the moment you're born, your mind begins collecting fragments. The warmth of a parent's arms, the first sound of your own name, a flicker of sunlight through trees. These moments pile up, quietly, invisibly, until they form something more than just recollections. They form a story, and that story becomes you. We tend to think of ourselves as solid, a single personality with a clear history. But in truth, identity is a fragile construction, a slow layering of memory upon memory, stitched together into something that feels consistent. But it's not. Not really. Your identity is only as stable as your ability to remember the past. Think about it. Who would you be if you couldn't recall your childhood, or your friends, or even your name? Would you still be the same person? Or would you be someone new, wearing your face, moving through your life with no connection to it? This is not just a philosophical question. It's something neurologists have studied for decades. In cases of severe amnesia, patients may lose access to nearly all of their autobiographical memory. They don't know who they are, where they live, what they once loved. And yet, they still behave like people. They feel, they respond, they exist. That leads to a strange truth. Memory may shape identity, but it's not the only thing keeping you here. Still, memory gives the self its texture. It's how you develop a sense of continuity, of being the same person today as you were yesterday. Without memory, the days would feel unanchored. Each morning might feel like a beginning. Each night, an ending. A self without memory is a self without a timeline. Even personality, the traits we think are unchanging, are built on the foundation of what we've experienced. Why are you cautious? Maybe because of a lesson you learned once. Why are you confident? Perhaps because of a memory of success. Strip those memories away, and you may behave differently, even believe differently. And yet, even people who lose large portions of memory often retain a kind of emotional consistency. Their reactions to things, music, faces, smells, can remain surprisingly steady. This suggests that the self isn't entirely made of conscious memory. Some parts of you lie deeper, underneath thought, beneath words. There are also studies in split-brain patients that suggest something startling. The sense of identity may not even be unified. When communication between the two hemispheres is cut, patients sometimes behave as if they are two minds in one body. One hand buttons the shirt, the other unbuttons it. One hemisphere speaks, the other stays silent but acts. This opens the possibility that you might not be a single, solid thing, but a story your brain tells to make sense of itself. A gentle lie for the sake of continuity. And stories, of course, need memory. That's why when memory fades, the story starts to unravel. Slowly, gently, as if the pages are becoming see-through. And when enough pages are gone, you're left asking, am I still me? But maybe the question isn't whether the self disappears without memory. Maybe the better question is, what remains? If you had to begin again, with no past to guide you, what would grow back? What choices would you make without the weight of history? These are quiet questions, not meant to unsettle, but to invite you inward, to suggest that who you are may not be fixed, but unfolding. Every night, as you sleep, your brain edits and prunes your memories. It forgets some things, reinforces others, and in doing so, it rewrites who you are, just a little. So the you that wakes up tomorrow will be new, by a fraction, by a thought, by a breath. Maybe that's not frightening. Maybe that's a kind of freedom. What happens when memory disappears? Imagine waking up and not knowing where you are. The face in the mirror feels unfamiliar. The voice on the phone calls you by a name that means nothing. You search your mind for the thread of your life and find only silence. This is not a fantasy. For many, it is reality. Memory loss, whether from trauma, illness, or age, slowly unravels the threads that connect the self to its story. And when enough of those threads are gone, identity becomes a question instead of an answer point. One of the most famous cases in neuroscience is that of Henry Molaison, known for years as simply HM, after undergoing brain surgery to treat severe epilepsy. HM lost the ability to form new long-term memories. Every moment was a loop. Every conversation forgotten minutes later. He lived in a permanent present. Yet he was polite, intelligent, warm. He still had personality. And strangely, he still had pieces of the past. He could remember childhood events, distant memories, but nothing new could stay. What does this tell us? That memory isn't just one thing. It's a spectrum. made of different systems, each shaped by different brain regions. Some memories stay, some vanish, and some shift into strange, quiet shadows. Then there are cases of retrograde amnesia, when people lose their past entirely. Names, dates, family, milestones, all erased. And yet, the body remembers. A man who forgets his identity might still know how to tie a shoe, play a piano, speak his native language. Muscle memory, emotional reflexes, deep knowledge buried. Beyond thought, it raises a haunting question. If a person forgets every detail of their past, but still walks, laughs, cries, and loves, are they still themselves? Many researchers say yes and no. Something essential remains, but something personal is lost. It's as if the house still stands, but the pictures on the walls have vanished for those living with Alzheimer's disease. The process is gradual. At first, small things slip away, names, appointments, familiar routines. Then come the deeper fractures, losing track of time, getting lost in once familiar neighborhoods, forgetting lifelong companions. And eventually, even the memory of the self begins to fray. But here's the quiet, beautiful truth. Even when words are gone, love often remains. The brain forgets facts, but it remembers warmth. People with advanced dementia may forget the name of a loved one, but still smile when they see them, still reach out, still feel comfort. There's something deep inside us that holds on, even when everything else lets go. And for those who recover from amnesia, the return of memory is often incomplete. Moments return in fragments. Some never come back at all, but people rebuild. They form new memories, new connections, new versions of themselves. So what do we make of all this? Maybe identity is not a single thread, but a woven fabric. And even when pieces are torn, the pattern still holds. Maybe who you are isn't just your story, but the way you respond when the story is lost. Maybe selfhood is not a constant, but a capacity, a gentle, persistent willingness to keep becoming. And maybe, just maybe, forgetting is not the end of identity, but its quiet transformation. Memory isn't a file. It's a fire that we often imagine memory as a file cabinet. Neatly labeled drawers, each containing a record of something we've seen, heard, or felt. Pull open the drawer, retrieve the file, and there's your past, crisp, unchanged, waiting to be reviewed. But the brain doesn't work that way. Memory isn't a file. It's a fire. Each time you remember something, your brain ignites a pattern. Neurons light up, like sparks catching in dry kindling. Emotions flicker into place. Sights, smells, voices, all drawn back together from scattered regions of your mind. And just like fire, the act of remembering consumes something. It changes the very structure of the memory itself. This is called reconsolidation, and it's one of the most surprising truths in neuroscience. Every time you recall a memory, you're not just playing it back. You're opening it up, making it vulnerable, letting it be altered by your current mood, your expectations, even by what you want to believe. And then your brain stores the updated version, slightly edited, slightly new. This is why two people can recall the same event and tell wildly different stories, and both might feel certain they're right. They're not lying. Their fires just burn differently. It's also why we sometimes forget details that once felt unforgettable. The edges blur, scenes fade. Over time, only the emotional core remains. We remember how something made us feel, more than what actually happened. This isn't a bug in the brain. It's a feature, because memory's job isn't perfect accuracy, it's survival. Your brain isn't trying to build a museum. It's trying to help you navigate the world. It remembers what was dangerous, what was joyful, what brought pain, or safety, and it stores those things in ways that help you act, not necessarily understand. In this sense, memory is dynamic, alive, not an archive, but a flame that flickers and shifts in the wind. Even so, the way we talk about memory, as if it's fixed, factual, permanent, can cause confusion. We trust our memories. We base relationships, decisions, and identities on them. But what if some of what we remember never happened, or happened differently? There's a phenomenon known as false memory, in which people confidently recall events that never occurred. Entire scenes, people, and conversations imagined as if they were real. In experiments, scientists have implanted completely fictional memories, like getting lost in a mall as a child, And people not only accept them, they expand on them. The brain wants coherence. It wants story. And if it needs to fill in blanks to create that, it will. This raises a haunting possibility. Some part of who you think you are may be based on something that never really happened, but that doesn't mean it's meaningless. Even a false memory can shape how you feel, how you act, and how you see the world. It still becomes part of the fire, and so we begin to see memory for what it truly is, not a container of facts, but a fluid dance of biology, emotion, and imagination. A nightly editorial process where each day's events are reviewed, trimmed, colored by feeling, and quietly added to the evolving narrative of the self that it's humbling to realize that our identities are shaped by such an unstable material. But maybe it's also beautiful, because if memory is a fire, ever burning, ever changing, then we are not static beings trapped in the past, that we are storytellers. And each memory, each retelling, each flicker of the flame is a moment of creation. The brain's need for story. The human brain is not just a processor of information. It's a weaver of stories, a meaning maker, a quiet narrator that tries to stitch random moments into a thread that runs through time and says, "This is who you are." Even when things don't make sense, your mind will try to make them make sense. That's why we search for reasons, why we ask why things happen the way they did. We want the world and ourselves to feel consistent, understandable, ordered. This drive for coherence is so powerful that your brain will invent reasons, even when it doesn't have them. In one famous experiment, researchers showed patients images or made them perform tasks, and then asked them why they'd made certain decisions. The real reasons were often arbitrary or even hidden from the conscious brain, but the participants still gave confident explanations. Their minds filled in the gaps, not to lie, but to believe. This is what psychologists call the narrative self. The idea that you understand yourself not through logic or memory alone, but through the story you believe about your life, that you're not just a person with a name and a past. You're a character in a personal story, a protagonist, a thread of continuity stretched from birth to now. And just like stories, we divide our lives into scenes, chapters, key turning points. We look for causes and effects. We seek arcs and resolutions. Even in painful memories, we want to find lessons, something that redeems the struggle, something that explains who we became. But stories are simplifications. They're edited for clarity, shaped by emotion, colored by hindsight. And sometimes they become prisons, because once we tell ourselves a story enough times, "I'm the shy one, I always mess up, no one stays in my life," we begin to live as if it's the only truth. Even when the facts change, even when the world offers something new, your narrative can become a lens that filters everything you see. That's why two people can live through the same moment and come away with entirely different meanings. One might see failure, the other a new beginning. The same event, two stories, two selves, and yet we need these stories. They help us make sense of change. They anchor us when we feel lost. They remind us of where we've been and what we might become. Children begin to understand themselves through story before they can even write. They tell their parents what happened at school. They invent reasons for their feelings. "I was sad because my toy broke. I'm brave because I helped." These tiny narratives are the beginning of identity. As we grow, the stories become more complex, but the impulse remains the same. This is why therapy, too, often revolves around narrative. People talk, they remember, they reframe, they retell, they write new endings to old wounds. Healing, sometimes, is simply the act of updating your story with new insights, new kindness, new meanings. And it's also why memory is not a passive act, but a creative one. You're not just looking back. You're rewriting, reframing, re-experiencing. You are both the storyteller and the story itself. When your memories change, your identity shifts with them. Not because you've lost the truth, but because you've discovered a new angle, a new voice, a different way to understand what's always been there. And just like any good story, your identity is allowed to evolve. The brain needs story not just to explain the world, but to understand itself. And tonight, in this still moment, you are listening to the quiet tale of who you are. Not a perfect record, not a final draft, but a living, breathing, human story told in thought, in memory, in imagination, the illusion of a fixed self. You wake up each morning with the same name, the same face, the same memories, mostly. You assume you're the same person you were yesterday, just a little older, perhaps a little more tired. But what if that assumption is just that? An assumption, a useful illusion, the idea of a fixed self, one stable personality across time, is deeply comforting. It gives us continuity, accountability, a sense of identity. But when scientists and philosophers look closely at the self, they find something surprising. It doesn't hold still. In Buddhist philosophy, this idea has existed for centuries, the concept of anatta, or no self. It suggests that the self is not a single, enduring soul, but a bundle of constantly shifting thoughts, sensations, and perceptions, like a flame, present, warm, visible, but always changing shape. Modern neuroscience agrees. There is no one place in the brain where the self resides, no hidden you behind your thoughts. Instead, there are systems, networks, processes. Your sense of identity emerges from the interaction of these systems, just like a melody emerges from individual notes, and those systems change constantly. Your brain rewires itself throughout life. New experiences form new connections. Old ones fade. Even the structure of your brain shifts depending on what you do, how you feel, who you're with. Think of yourself 10 years ago. Are you really the same person? Your beliefs may have changed. Your values, your habits, your way of speaking. You may even look back on your past self with confusion or compassion or disbelief that if the self were fixed, that wouldn't be possible. But here's the trick. Your brain keeps updating the story as you go. It blends past and present so smoothly that it feels seamless, like a movie that hides every cut. You feel like one person, because the illusion is that convincing that it's not a lie. It's a function. The illusion of a stable self helps you move through life. It helps you plan, make promises, feel responsibility. It gives coherence to your relationships. It helps you love someone not just in a moment, but over time. But illusions can also trap us. They make us believe we're stuck being who we've always been. They make us fear change, as if it would break the story. They tell us things like, I'm not creative, or I've always been anxious, or this is just who I am. But the science and the silence tells us something else. You are allowed to change. Because you are always changing. You're not a statue. You're a current, not a portrait, but a process. Even the act of listening to this, right now, is altering your neural pathways. Softly, quietly, like footsteps forming a new trail in the woods of your mind. If you feel stuck, if you feel trapped by your past, remember this. The self is not a cage. It's a canvas, and you are still painting. You might ask, if there's no fixed self, then who's thinking these thoughts? That's the mystery, the beauty. There is awareness, but maybe not a single owner of that awareness. Maybe the self is not a thing, but a moment, a pattern, a pause. Just as a wave is not the ocean, but an expression of it, perhaps you are not a single entity, but a passing form in a much larger process. That doesn't make you less real. It makes you more free. The role of emotion in memory and identity. What makes a memory unforgettable? Is it the detail, the place, the people? More often than not, it's the feeling. Emotion is the glue that holds our memories together. It's what tells the brain, this matters. Remember this. A birthday smile, a heartbreak, the moment you first felt truly seen. These don't stay with us because they were logical. They stay because they were felt. When you think back on your life, you don't just remember facts. You remember how moments made you feel. That's because your emotional system and your memory system are deeply connected. The amygdala, the brain's emotional hub, works closely with the hippocampus, which helps store and retrieve memories. When you feel something strongly, your amygdala signals the hippocampus. Pay attention. This is important. That's why fear sharpens your memory. Why joy deepens it. Why grief etches certain days into your mind like stone. And because of this, emotion doesn't just shape what you remember. It shapes how you remember. A memory recalled in sadness might feel heavier, even darker than it was. The same moment, remembered in joy, might feel warmer, brighter. The emotional lens shifts the story. But here's where it gets more interesting. Emotion doesn't just influence memory, it shapes identity. You believe certain things about yourself, not just because they happened, but because of how they felt. Maybe you believe you're brave because you once faced something that terrified you. And in that moment, you felt your fear and still acted. Maybe you believe you're unlovable, not because of any single event, but because of a lingering feeling, a pattern of emotional echoes that replay in your mind. The stories you tell yourself are built not just from memory, but from emotion. And like memory, emotion is not always accurate. It can rise from past wounds, from misunderstood moments, from things you've never spoken aloud. And yet, those emotions feel real, because they are, and that's what makes identity so personal, so human. You are not a list of facts. You are a feeling, a collection of emotional echoes. And the louder those echoes, the more deeply they shape who you believe you are. Even core beliefs, I'm a good person, I don't belong, I'm always in control, are built on repeated emotional experience. We feel something enough times, and we begin to wear it like a second skin. But there's a gift hidden in this. If your identity is shaped by emotion, then emotional healing can change that identity. When you feel safety where you once felt fear, when you feel connection where you once felt rejection, when you feel peace where there was once only noise, you are not just healing a feeling. You are rewriting yourself. And because memory is tied to emotion, those new emotional experiences can even override old ones. Not erase them, but soften them, dim them. Make room for new meaning. So tonight, as you rest, remember this. Every time you feel something fully, you're not just responding to life. You're shaping your story. You're deepening the self, not in logic, but in feeling. And sometimes, the quietest moments, the ones spent in thought or in stillness, carry the most transformative emotions. So let them in. Feel them. Let them settle like stars in the vast space of who you are, dreams, imagination, and the fluid self. Close your eyes and imagine that you're walking through a forest made of light. Trees shimmer like crystal. The air hums with soundless color. None of it exists, and yet, you see it. You feel it. For a moment, it's real. This is the power of imagination. This is where the self begins to loosen its edges. Night. When we dream, our minds slip into a world untethered by logic, time, or even identity. You might be yourself or someone else. You might fly, speak a different language, relive a memory that never happened. And somehow, in the dream, it all makes sense. Dreams remind us the self is not solid. It shifts. It plays. It becomes. In dreams, emotion takes center stage. The usual boundaries, space, language, continuity, dissolve. And in that space, we learn something strange and beautiful. Our minds are capable of building entire worlds from nothing. And not only that, but we believe those worlds while we're inside them. Even the most bizarre dreams feel true in the moment. Why? Because the part of the brain responsible for critical thinking slows down during dreaming. The imagination takes over, and the self becomes flexible, but it doesn't end when we wake. Imagination continues in daydreams, in art, in storytelling. You picture futures. You revisit pasts. You imagine what others are feeling, what might have been, what still could be. And in each imagined moment, a different version of you comes to life. This is why storytelling is so powerful. When you read a novel, watch a film, or hear a bedtime tale, your brain doesn't just observe, it participates. It activates the same regions that would be engaged if the experience were real. You become the characters. You feel their fears, their joy, their wonder. You are not bound to oneself. Inside you live countless versions. Some you've met, some are still waiting. The brave you, the gentle you, the curious child, the future dreamer, all flickering into form with each act of imagination. This fluidity is not weakness, it's richness, and sometimes it's where healing begins. In therapy, in art, in quiet reflection, people imagine conversations they never had. They speak to lost loved ones. They rewrite endings. They imagine forgiveness. And in doing so, their brain and heart respond as if it's real, because in some ways, it is. Imagination is not an escape from reality. It's part of how we build reality. It allows us to explore possible selves, and in doing so, discover parts of us we never knew were there. So what does this mean for identity? It means who you are is not confined to this moment. It means you can be many things and still be you. You can hold grief and joy, doubt and hope. You can remember who you were while becoming someone new. Dreams and imagination invite us to loosen the grip on rigid identity, to play, to wonder, to rest in the unknown. So tonight, as you listen, allow your mind to soften. Let it drift. Let it wander, not to escape, but to expand, because you are not just the person in your waking life. You are the voice that dreams, the eye that imagines, the self that flows like water between moments, shifting, shimmering, infinite. Identity through time. Who were you, and who will you be? Think back to your childhood, not to a specific moment, but to the feeling of being young. The way time stretched out like an endless sky. The questions you used to ask. The games you used to play. The way you saw the world before it was named. Was that person you? It's tempting to say yes. After all, you have the memories. You know the story. But if you could stand beside your childhood self, would they recognize you? Would they understand the choices you've made, the thoughts you now carry, the things you've let go of? This is the quiet question at the heart of identity. If you're always changing, are you still the same? As we move through life, we often look back and say, I can't believe I used to think that. I don't recognize who I was. Sometimes with humor, sometimes with sadness, but always with distance. That we are not who we were. The brain, too, is not the same. Neurons are pruned, synapses rewired. Some memories fade, others deepen. Even the way we interpret the past changes with age. Your present self might look back on your teenage dreams with kindness or disbelief. Your adult self may now see your parents differently. Your regrets may have softened. Your priorities may have shifted. And the voices in your head, once loud with judgment, might now be quieter, wiser, or more compassionate. And just as the past self is distant, so is the future one. Think for a moment about who you might be in 10 years. Where will you live? What will you care about? What will you have learned or unlearn it? It's hard to say, because we often assume the person we are now is the final version. But 10 years ago, you might have thought the same. And yet, here you are, different in ways you couldn't have predicted. Psychologists call this the end of history illusion. It's the tendency to believe we've already become who we'll always be. Even though we keep changing, we forget that we will keep changing. But that change doesn't make us false. It makes us human. You are a process unfolding in time, like a tree growing new rings or a river shifting its course. And when you feel lost or unsure, it might help to remember this is not your final form. There is more of you waiting. There are parts of you you haven't met yet, and some of the most important versions of you may not even exist yet. They are sleeping within you, quiet, patient, becoming. You don't have to know who you'll be. You only have to stay open. To growth, to softness, to curiosity. Tonight, as you lie still, try to feel the thread that connects all yourselves, past, present, and future. Not a perfect line, not a straight path, but a thread that curves, weaves, evolves. You were once someone else. You are still becoming someone new, and both truths can exist side by side. In peace, the quiet power of self-awareness, in a world full of noise and motion, there is something deeply powerful about simply noticing a thought, a breath, a feeling that rises and falls like a soft wave. This is self-awareness, not in the loud, performative way, but in the quiet way that feels like standing still in a forest and listening. Self-awareness isn't the same as self-criticism. It's not the voice that says, you're not enough. It's the voice that says, I see you. It's the gentle attention that watches without judgment, that notices patterns without punishing them, that allows you to feel what you feel, not to react, but to understand. And this understanding, over time, becomes a kind of compass, not to control the self, but to meet it. You start to see how certain emotions arise, how old fears still echo, how certain thoughts return, not because they're true, but because they're familiar. And in seeing all of this, clearly and calmly, you begin to remember something you may have forgotten. You are not your thoughts. You are not your feelings. You are the space that holds them. You are the witness. Think of a sky filled with weather, sun, storm, wind, cloud. Each moment looks different, but beneath it all is sky, vast, still, unchanged. You are that sky. Self-awareness doesn't erase struggle, but it gives you room to breathe. It creates space between the event and your response. It allows you to say, yes, I'm feeling anger. Yes, I'm feeling doubt. Yes, this is here, and so am I. And sometimes that pause is everything. It's the space that lets you choose a different path, to speak more gently, to listen more fully, to forgive yourself or someone else without needing to forget. Over time, this awareness grows stronger. It becomes a soft light that you carry with you, a way of returning to yourself, even in chaos. Not a mirror this time, but a window, a way of seeing inward. And the more you practice it, the more you realize awareness isn't something you find. It's something you are. It was always there, waiting beneath the surface, like the ocean floor beneath the waves, like the moon behind the clouds. So tonight, as you listen, let yourself rest in that space, not to fix, not to change, just to witness. Notice your breath. Notice the feeling of your body sinking into stillness. Notice how even now there is a self that is watching quietly, patiently, without needing anything from you. That is awareness. That is the quiet, steady center of your being. And no matter how many selves you become, it will always be there, letting go of the illusion, embracing the mystery. Now, we arrive at the edge of the thought we've been circling. All this time, we've been peeling back the layers of memory, emotion, time, imagination. We've looked in mirrors. We've drifted through dreams. We've watched our past selves change, our future selves flicker, and our present selves breathe. And what we find again and again is this: there is no single, solid you. There is no permanent shape the self must take. No fixed identity to cling to. Just movement, change, awareness. Like the tide, like the seasons, like the stars turning in the sky, that we spend so much time trying to define ourselves. Who am I? What do I want? What does it all mean? But perhaps the more peaceful question is, can I simply be here as I am and let that be enough? Can you rest just for now without needing to solve yourself? Because the idea that you must be consistent, that you must always know, always be sure, that's the illusion. The deeper truth is more spacious. You are not just one thing. You never were. You are a collection of stories, layered and rewoven with each breath. You are the echo of every word spoken to you and the silence that followed. You are the child, the dreamer, the witness, the question, the pause. You are not broken. You are not incomplete. You are becoming, and that becoming will never end. What if that's not something to fear, but something to cherish? Because if you are always becoming, you are never stuck. You are never finished. You are always free to grow. You can choose again. You can see with new eyes. You can forgive yourself for what you didn't know before. And even now, in this quiet moment, you are already doing it. Just by listening, just by feeling, just by being. So tonight, let go of the idea that you must find yourself. Let go of the pressure to explain your identity. Let go of the old names, the outdated roles, the echoes that no longer serve you. Instead, breathe. Let the mystery of who you are expand like the sky above your bed. Let it hold you. Vast, soft, unknowable. Kind. You are not just a name, not just a role, not just a memory. You are the space behind the story, the stillness between the thoughts, the awareness that watches it all. And that is enough. So rest now. Float in the quiet. Let this story settle in your chest like a warm stone. You are allowed to not know. You are allowed to change. You are allowed to be many things, all at once. Thank you for sharing this journey with me, this slow descent into the beautiful blur of identity. If this story helped you feel more at ease, more curious, more seen, I hope you'll let me know. Leave a comment. Tell me what part stayed with you. Tell me what mystery you'd like to explore next. Because this channel, Science Beyond Sleep, is a space for us to wonder together. And if you'd like more journeys like this, more gentle thoughts for the night, please subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who might need it. But for now, let go. Let your body rest. Let your thoughts drift. You don't need to hold on to anything anymore. That you've gone deep. You've looked inward. You've touched something real, and the night is still young. Good night.